just across from Mineral Lick, 20 metres, and probably 70 metres from my high seat is one of our typical feeders that we've got. Once it's full, this will last a month and a half, depending on what populations we've got here. This one's getting hit pretty hard by fallow and roe deer at the moment, but it is the start of the new year, January, and well, winter's at its, as you can see, a bit of snow, frost, it's at its hardest. And I use a feed bean that I buy off the farmers, and depending on the tube that feeds the plate, I'll mix that with wheat. If it's a narrow tube, I'll mix the beans with the wheat to help it flow. But with this one, this is like 5 centimetres square. It's wide enough to feed the tray without jamming. And again, the feed tray is sort of like mid-calf height, so the deer can feed not on the floor. It just stops the pheasants and everything coming to it so much. They still come. Also the badgers as well. Puts it at a nice height for the deer to feed at, whether it's again a muntjac or a big fallow buck. He can get his head under it, and they're very sturdy. And you can see from this one how much trade it's getting. It's just, I don't know, 3-4 metre circular wet patch, just all covered in slots of muntjac and roe and fallow, and yeah, it's just one of our main feeding areas. This one's about a third full. It normally holds about 6 bags, sort of like 20 kilo bags we put into here, so a considerable amount. And you can see this was filled up at the start of December. It's now early January. It's had a month, and yeah, it's probably had, I don't know, 40-50% of it eaten. So feeders within Service UK take many different shapes and sizes, and this is a very economical one that's generally long lasting. I get about 10 years out of these galvanised dustbins that you can get on eBay for about 18-20 quid, and very simple to do. This one's on the corner of what used to be a plantation that's now been breached from about 20 years ago. The deer use it as a sanctuary, then come out of it. So I've just made use of this post and screwed it to the post with fixings and spaced it off at the back, just so you can get the lid on. Very, very simple. This one's been out for about 3 months, and already they've taken to it. Basically just cut a slit with some tin snips and then up again, so it's a T shape, and then just curl it back so it doesn't catch on the mouth of the deer or whatever wildlife's feeding on it. I do it so it's right on the edge. There's a lip here, so and we generally lean the bin forward so the rain runs down and off it rather than going into it. And this is a very easy way for the deer to take some in, and depending on how quickly they're feeding, I can narrow that down so it doesn't give out so much food. I'm using feed beans, which is our standard. I mix it with wheat sometimes, but in here it's purely beans. This is a feeder from probably 3 months it's been out, and they're taking to it already, and you can see where it's been licked smooth around it. I use lots of different varieties of feeders, and this is just one very simple do-it-yourself one, but has proved effective for the last 15-20 years. Keep the crafty fallow bucks from flipping the lid off. So here's another example of a feed station. This is a little wood here. Between 2 other pieces of woodland, and it's like a very good corridor, so we get a lot of deer passing through it. So I've got a mineral lick just over there, and this pipe feeder that's been here for probably, I don't know, 6-7 years, and in the winter I really can't keep it full. So you take the lid off, pour the beans in. This has got a mixture of beans and wheat, and it's just raised off the floor for the muntjac. It's primarily muntjac, roe and fallow in this area, and then I've put half a bag on the floor for them to feed. and then just across there I've got a Minox DTC 550 trail camera straight onto here, and then every 2 or 3 weeks I bring that card in and have a look what we got on. So here I'm looking for suitable cull animals. 40 metres that way is a high seat. When I put anybody up the seat or I sit with anybody, I can generally know what's in the vicinity and hopefully when it's coming. So just reconnaissance yet again that helps us out, and food to help the deer through the winter, keep them in good condition and keep them in areas where we can do discreet deer management away from the public footpaths and things like that. Okay, so this is a piece of steel pipe. It's I don't know, 15 centimetres, 8-9 inches in diameter. It's got a tray welded onto the bottom, and then a little hole there that's probably, I don't know, 4 centimetres by a centimetre, just enough to keep feeding away and getting some grub out. It's also really handy for shooting squirrels off as well.
You get a lot of people that actually say that, you know, on stalking forums, you shouldn't shoot deer on a feeder. What's your opinion on that?
Well, it depends. If it's a group of fallow deer, I'd probably agree with it. But generally the fallow deer come at night to our feeders. But if it's a muntjac, they generally come on their own, or it might be a doe with a yearling kid. And I already know that's the one I want to take normally. So I would agree with it in some ways and disagree with it in others. But again, mineral lick just over there, and that again is another attractant for deer. And again, it's not always about shooting them from the high seat. It's also, oh, here comes a little muntjac, turn around, coming straight towards us. Look, come on, film it.
Anyway, carry on with the interview.
I must have heard the beans in the ground. Come on. So you can see it's 2:30 in the afternoon, winter's afternoon, and the deer will come readily to feed here at any time of the day. Normally at times when you don't expect them, so you'd hope they'd be here at first and last light, and that's probably the chance they won't come then. They'll probably come in the middle of the day when it's quiet, there's not dog walkers about, or during these lockdown times there's a lot of people walking throughout the estate anywhere they want. So just after lunch it's quite quiet now, and people out in the woods, sorry, it's nice and quiet in the woods, and the deer have got some peace and quiet to go about their normal business. So when you've got high volume fallow to feed, this is another feeder in all different ones that we use. This is full of beans, and I've offset a feed tray just here, and they can get in, and it's very difficult to gorge on these. They really have to just keep licking away. But again, it's not just the fallow, muntjac, roe deer, it's also squirrels, jaybirds. It feeds all the wildlife, but again, just keeps them in the vicinity where we can do a discreet cull, and away from the footpaths where there's people who perhaps don't like what we do. So many people, especially the European people that watch, ask me what we feed our deer. It's a very high protein bean, agricultural feed bean, a fava bean, F-A-V-A bean, fava bean, and it's planted and harvested, and then it gets exported a lot for a food source, but it gets used in British agriculture a lot as a cattle feed, and they flatten it, press it, and this becomes like a kibble, like a crunchy dust that the cattle can feed on. And again, very high protein. That's why the deer like it in the winter, because of the protein element of it. But anyway, just a few metres up the track from our feeder, we get a track coming out of the thick part of the forest straight to the feeder, and you can just see the amount of trade here. Muntjac roe slots where they're crossing and jumping this ditch and hitting the mud on the other side. All this is really fresh, and generally it's to cross the ditch and go straight to our feeder.